Hello BookTube, it's Roz, and today I'm asking, what is it about me and books about nuns? The reason I'm asking this is because I just finished reading In This House of Brede by Rumer Godden, which I read as my Maybe Midrash choice. So Maybe Midrash is a readathon, I'll mention the host below, that asks us to read books where religion of some kind is a key theme or element in the content. And I had such a wonderful time reading this novel that it made me reflect on the other books about nuns that I've read and liked. And I did think, is this just me? And then I had a look on Goodreads, and realised, well, obviously, no, it isn't just me. There are a lot of very enthusiastic reviews for In This House of Brede, and also, whole reading lists of, nun-based novels. So here goes. I'm going to talk about why I think there's a certain fascination in books about nuns, and then I'm going to give you my top 5 nun-connected novels. Okay, so I have been reflecting on this, and I think, why is there a fascination about books set in convents or in religious communities, and particularly religious communities of women? And I think it's because it's like a world set apart, and a world that most of us don't get to be part of or know about. So there's a kind of a mysterious element to it, like getting behind closed doors or something, and a feeling of, is there something a bit wrong or odd about it? Why would a woman choose to join a nunnery, a convent? Why choose to reject the things that women are supposed to like? Like we're supposed to like men and babies and all of that. And so there's something slightly transgressive about women choosing to go and live somewhere that's just women, and reject family life and so on. So there's a bit of that, and sometimes that comes into books in a slightly prurient fashion of like, oh well, they've just not met the right man, or they just want to be in some sort of lesbian paradise of all women, or I don't know, or that they might have been forced into it, or tricked into it, or done it because they had a broken heart, or I don't know, or because they can't cope with the world outside. All those sort of reasons kind of, or ideas and cliches kind of can come into people reading about nuns, I suppose. And but there's also a sort of a slightly sort of feeling of I don't know, that it might be kind of romantic or inspiring, and obviously for some people it's there's a sort of a religious inspiration in choosing to dedicate your life to your faith rather than the world. So all of those things are at play, I think. Now, but I think the most important reason why I enjoy books about nuns is actually there's something about a book that is set in an enclosed world, and that enclosed world, with like a fixed community, or people might come and go, but it's like it's its own microcosm, so like books set in boarding schools, or books set on, I don't know, space stations, or or to take an example of a book I just finished this month as well, The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, which is set in a sanatorium for people with TB up in the Alps. So where you've got, it gives you a fixed cast of characters for your novel, and there's so much that an author can do with that, I think. So my top selection. Well, I'm going to start before I get to my top 5, which I'll do in time-honoured reverse order, of course, with some honourable mentions. 2 of these honourable mentions are not novels, okay? They're memoirs about being a nun and leaving. And I think my favourite is I Leap Over the Wall by Monica Baldwin. Now, She wrote this in the 1940s, late 1940s, but she became a nun in an enclosed order in 1914, so just before the start of World War One. She spent 28 years in that community and left in 1941 at a time when it was quite hard to leave, and you had to get special dispensation from the Pope. And when the title of the novel, I Leap Over the Wall, was saying how in like medieval times the only way you could get out was to jump, sort of theory. But yeah, so she came out in 1941 in the middle of World War II, and the sort of disconnect between life in the very beginning of the 20th century, when she went in, and being thrown into the 1940s was a fascinating topic to write about, quite apart from writing about her 28 years in this enclosed order. Another more up-to-date, not very up-to-date one, which I read just about when it came out, was Through the Narrow Gate by Kathryn Armstrong, which came out in 1981. She joined a monastery in 1962 at the age of 17, and came out about, I think, 6-7 years later. 1969 she left, and in contrast perhaps with Monica Baldwin, she I guess was quite traumatized by her experience of being a nun. Probably should never have gone in the first place. What are you thinking of, taking girls at 17? In the 1960s. It's much older now. You have to be a grown up before you're allowed to become a nun these days. But interestingly, Kathryn Armstrong has ended up as a well-known writer on comparative religion. Anyway, I have to say that Through the Narrow Gate kind of appealed to my almost sort of prurient idea of I don't know, convents being slightly monstrous places in a way that almost like abuse women. So two different memoirs there, but let's get on to the novels. And I will start with two honourable mentions for novels. Black Narcissus by Rumer Godden, which she published in 1939, and The Nun's Story by Kathryn Hulme from 1956. Now, they both fall into a kind of almost like a category of stories about nuns, because they're in the sort of the kind of story where you get someone becomes a nun and they have this sort of sense of purpose about it, but then they meet and are troubled by a kind of difficult but charismatic man in some circumstances, and this is a trial of their faith. They're also both similar in that they're about a small group of nuns that are in a country other than their own. Black Narcissus is set in India, and The Nun's Story is set in the Belgian Congo, and that sort of thing where they have good intentions, but their ideas and culture is so out of tune with the place that they are, that they are an element of colonialism without kind of fully appreciating that until they and then they don't fit and it doesn't work, I guess. Both good novels in some ways, but not brilliant. Let's get on to my top 5, and coming in at number 5 is The Abbess of Crewe by Muriel Spark. Now, that was published in 1974. Now, this one is a bit of an outlier because it is a book about a convent and nuns, but it's also really a satire. She uses a kind of a convent election and with sort of bugging and other shenanigans as a way of commenting on Richard Nixon's White House and the Watergate scandal. So but because this is written by Muriel Spark, and you might know her best as the author of The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, so because it's by her, it is clever and witty and sharp and has brilliant women characters, and definitely an interesting book to read, and works on both levels as the characters in the book and as an allegory or satire. In at number 4, we have Sacred Hearts by Sarah Dunant, which came out in 2008. Now, this is much more sort of straightforward historical fiction set in a convent. It's a more conventional book, I suppose, but a real page turner. And you're in Italy. It's the end of the 16th century. Serafina is a sort of 16-year-old whose father sort of forces her into this convent to solve a problem of his own, and she's rebellious and unhappy, but she finds sort of both troubles but also warmth and friendship and sisterly support and a faith of her own. It's but there's lots of politicking going on as well, which is kind of it seems to come up in every nun-based novel. The idea of sort of politics with a small p within the convent. It's I like it as a novel, partly because it's just a great page turner and it really kind of brings 16th century women to life, but also because it I guess Dunant is even-handed or successful in how she looks at the convent as a limiting place, on the one hand, for women, but on the other hand as actually a place of freedom and opportunity, and that gives you scope for independent thought and artistic work and intellectual development and relationships, that perhaps the outside world didn't necessarily for a 16th century Italian woman. And I think that's another of the sort of recurring themes that you get in nun novels, but a good one. And it's very much the theme of number 3 on my upward scale of nun novels, Matrix by Lauren Groff. Bringing us right up to date, 2021 this one came out, and it's set in the 12th century with a young French woman who, again, rather against her will, is sent to be prioress, so an important figure in an English abbey of again Benedictine nuns. Not because she has a religious vocation, but because it's expedient. The Queen, Eleanor of Aquitaine, decides that she needs to be got out of the way and put there. And what Groff does with that is, I think, superb. I know it's a Marmite novel and not everyone has loved this, but it's not sort of it's historical fiction that is sometimes a bit ahistorical, but what she does is she shows Marie, the main character, sort of deciding, okay, this is my life, I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm not going to make the best of it for myself, I'm going to make the best of it for this community of women. I'm going to make this a safe, supportive space for women-only space. Yeah, that sounds very sort of 21st century. Well, yes, it is, but it's also kind of couched in the 12th century world successfully, I think. It's short, it's vigorous, it's full of ideas. I thought it was a really sparky novel that I definitely a recommendation from me. Well, obviously it's in my top 3 novels about nuns, isn't it? So what comes in at number 2? Now, I have to say, number 1 and number 2 are on a different day. I could flip them the other way around, but the one I've put at number 2 is The Corner That Held Them by Sylvia Townsend Warner. Now, she wrote that, came out in 1948. It's also, like The Matrix, starts in the 12th century, in a convent in the 12th century, but is very different in that Matrix is all about this central character, the Marie, who dominates the book and dominates the convent, whereas Townsend Warner set out to do something, I don't know, quite innovative, I think, innovative in 1948 and probably would still be now. You know, it feels quite a modern novel when you read it, because what she does is she doesn't give us a one main protagonist. The central figure, I guess, in this novel is the community of the convent, and she follows it through from the 12th century up until the late 14th century, I think. Yeah, late 14th century. And so we get a kind of a sequence of characters that kind of are introduced, and we get to know and become perhaps a kind of the key core, and then they grow old and they die, and but meanwhile others have come in. It's like a parade of these nuns over a couple of 100 years, and it's really about the almost like the detail of their daily lives, of their existence, the ups and downs emotionally and practically, of sustaining this rather isolated convent in the middle of the Norfolk Fens. It's being Sylvia Townsend Warner, and she's probably best known for Lolly Willows. Yeah, that's, I think, her best known novel. But being a Townsend Warner novel, it's a bit strange. It's at times very funny. It's psychologically acute, quite poignant sometimes. I have to say, when I got to the end of that novel, I felt bereft. It was like I was living with that community, and I felt like I was being taken away from it, but it would carry on without me, and I was going to miss out on what happened next. You don't get a much sort of stronger, recommendation of a novel than that, do you? So, but the one I picked as my number one is In This House of Brede by Rumer Godden, and the fact that I just finished it and loved it so much is probably kind of one of the reasons why it's up there in the number one place. But there's another reason, and well, first I will say this is about a high-powered sort of senior civil servant it's sort of set in the 1950s. It came out in 1969, but it was set in the 1950s. She's, a high flyer in I don't know, the Foreign Office or something, but she decides in middle age to take a dramatic change of direction and to enter, or seek to enter, an enclosed order of Benedictine nuns, and then we follow her through the next decade and her life in that enclosed community and how that works out for her. I think it's a very good novel. It's long. I don't know, like 500 pages or something, but it doesn't feel long. I was glued to this book. Why I think that it deserves first place and edges out the Sylvia Townsend Warner, which is possibly a I don't know, intrinsically better novel, but this one has to be first place because, unlike most books that you read, most novels that you read about nuns, it's actually about having a genuine vocation. It's about why you might really choose that life, not that life because you want that life, not to get away from things or because you're deluded or because your father forces you in there or any number of other reasons. She wants this life of prayer and work and seclusion, and it shows the joy and the love and the warmth and the beauty of that life, as well as the challenges and the struggles and that enclosed community thing of the interrelationships between people that are stuck with each other, don't have any they can't walk away from each other. Or, I mean, you're not trapped. You can, but they're bound together in this community like a family, but and have to, find a way of making that work. And it made sense for me of that sort of the religious purpose, I suppose, of a convent, while still being, for a non-believer, just a bloody good story, and a really well written novel. So that's my top 5, plus some honourable mentions, as I say. Do you like reading books about nuns? If you do you have any recommendations for me of really good ones that I could add to my list? And or do you think that it's a strange thing to want to read about, and that in which case you probably won't comment? You'll just think, oh, that Ros, what is she going on about? There we go. Perhaps we'll have to do a video about books sent in monasteries next, but I think they're a little different. Anyway, I won't go there. Bye.